we have Gigguk, The Art of Ending an Anime. I saw Code Geass in the thumbnail. We got to go for it.
This video is sponsored by Another Eden. Another Eden is a free-to-play JRPG adventure for iOS and Android, and before I go any further, this was written and directed by Masato Kato, who wrote the likes of Chrono Trigger, Xenogears, Heroes of Mana, and many more. Yes, unlike a lot of mobile games, this is a super story-focused RPG with a lengthy 26-chapter campaign, visiting multiple timelines and locations voiced in both English and full Wii. Yes, it's a much more traditional story-driven JRPG, and as a JRPG enthusiast, I already know all the ins and outs. Look, it's wanted me not to fight this dude, but I'm pretty confident I can handle
Nice.
This must be the Dark Souls of mobile games! You get to choose between a big variety of party members, but I've also got to mention the music, because it was composed by Yasunori Mitsuda and Proicon Studio, who also worked on Chrono Trigger and Xenogears, because this is by far the best OST I've heard for any mobile game.
It does sound good.
If this top-class production sounds like your cup of tea, click the link in the description to download it on iOS and Android. And with that said, let's get on with today's video. Anime endings, no, not that. The ending of an anime, no, not fucking that. The part that comes at the end of an anime, no, not fucking that. The final act of an anime in which the events happening in the plot, characters, and series come to a conclusion, aka the ending, is an important part of any anime. It can be the culmination of the journey that's been taken, it can give the entire series a sense of resolution and closure, and in some cases can literally make or break an anime. But I feel in this age of seasonal anime, 3-episode rules, dropping shows harder than the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs, something not discussed enough is anime. And for fuck's sake! A good friend of mine once said the ending is paramount.
Yes.
Pictures.
No,
Stay toasty. But I feel like in anime, because of the way it's made, there are different directions we as anime fans see a lot, from the conclusive to the open-ended to the downright what the fuck. So I wanted to just take this video to just kind of discuss the different types of endings we usually see, my perceptions of them as a whole, and how they fit into the anime culture in general. Now, I want to keep this a general discussion about endings without spoiling everything I'm talking about, so to help you avoid this, on every section, I will be listing any shows in which I either detail or show spoilerific plot points to do with the ending. So if you want to skip any sections, the timestamps of each section will be in the description below. So with that out of the way, first let's start with... If there's one easy way for a new anime to grab my attention, it's just by knowing that it's an anime original series. Firstly, because this means we don't have any source material, meaning we don't get those manga readers acting like 200 IQ geniuses being like, oh, is that what you think's gonna happen, poor anime-only watchers?
I see that there's the Obito-Jubito fight going on in the background there, yeah. So, I mean, this is also important because there's series I've liked, like Dead Man Wonderland, and I actually didn't know it had the manga adaptation until halfway through the anime back when I was in high school, right? You know, even then, that's where anime and manga can technically diverge. But I mean, he brings a good point up here.
Me, I'm so smart because I know what's gonna happen next. And then light novel readers are there like, foolish mortals. And secondly, because it's not based on a pre-existing IP, it's likely that it will have an ending that's conclusive, or even better, it means the entire story from beginning to end is already pre-planned. Anime original series are not common occurrences, but many shows, old and new, stick out to me because of this fact. Cowboy Bebop, Eureka 7, Code Geass, even in more...
Anytime Code Geass is brought up, it just makes, and I've seen a couple of the clips throughout, anytime Code Geass gets brought up, it is always a good day. It is such a powerful series.
Recent times with recreators and a place further than the universe. Of course, it wasn't just the ending that made these shows stand out, but it did help a lot. Something like Zanki no Terror, despite a lot of the problems I had with it, stick with me clearly because it felt like a complete story that was planned out with an ending I've really enjoyed. And like, holy shit, recreators did this revolutionary thing in anime called an epilogue, where the entire last episode was no action, no plot. It was just dedicated to tying up loose ends and seeing what characters were up to after the story was concluded, to leave the viewer with a sense of closure. What the fuck? But of course,
I know tangentially on Code Geass, the other end, the answer to it, quote unquote, is Guilty Crown. Guilty Crown sort of had an epilogue. I mean, like, I would argue if you can leave an anime or even just a piece of media off on a cliffhanger, it is a way to end it. There is a sense of satisfaction seeing where are they now? Not necessarily to the point where Boruto is, maybe, right? Because Boruto's an entirely different series off of Naruto, right? But having a Where Are They Now segment, end of Code Geass, right? You see Colin getting ready for school. Her mom is, looking a lot better, after the refrain and being in prison, right? Or I guess I should say incarcerated, technically, right? I don't know if she went to prison specifically. But, she's going through, and you get to see, some of how the world has changed. You get to see Nunnally coming off and shaking the plan and shaking hands with Zero. You get to see Valletta and Ogi and their expecting family, right? Jeremiah embracing Orange and, with Anya, right? Helping him, right? There is a way epilogues can end a piece of media in a powerful fashion. And that's actually something I think that the Lord of the Rings trilogy, Return of the King, don't get me wrong, I absolutely love Lord of the Rings trilogy. I think that missed the mark because it couldn't quite understand where it wanted the epilogue to be. We had 5, 6 epilogues in that, and we didn't even get the Scouring of the Shire, which is important from the book perspective of things. It's a very important commentary from Tolkien. And, have Return of the King with several epilogues, or have a show without no epilogues versus a show with an epilogue, and see how you feel. Just look at them to quantify what I'm explaining.
Just because something is anime original doesn't mean it's guaranteed to have a good ending.
No.
In fact, there used to be this thing called Gainax endings, where certain shows coincidentally produced by Studio Gainax would get endings that made no sense or serve as sequel hooks to sequels that were never made.
Yeah.
Fortunately, Gainax endings nowadays seem to have died with the decline of the studio, only to find themselves isekai'd to Trigger for its own light novel adaptation of That Time I Got Reincarnated as Darling in the Franxx. But even some anime that have had conclusive enough endings have had a reoccurring issue, because if it gets enough success and popularity, there's always the chance that the creators felt it was appropriate to revive it and have another go.
Yep, I'm intimately familiar with this, with the Re 1, Re 2, Re 3, and Resurrection. I actually really like Resurrection as a movie for Code Geass. Felt it was appropriate with the Jibun O incoming.
Little things that are sacred in anime these days, and one of them certainly isn't the legacy of a popular franchise. It doesn't matter how good or how conclusive and complete a series can be when it's over, there's always going to be a way to retcon or arse pull or literally resurrect a new narrative to milk out a few more dollars out of beloved franchises just in time to give me my Jibun O's! On the rare occasion, you get something like Diebuster adding a new story in the same world years after Gunbuster, but there are numerous examples of sequels coming in that not only result in a vastly inferior ending to the original series, but even going as far as completely fucking up and ruining the established canon. We went from Darker Than Black Season 1, Chinese Electric Batman, to Darker Than Black Season 2, Alcoholic Dad Simulator. Madoka Rebellion was a sequel movie that people had opinions about. And then there's Eureka 7 AO. Now, if AO was viewed as a standalone series, it would be fine, just a fairly forgettable average show. But as a sequel, it's a fucking travesty, introducing plot elements that completely broke characters and themes from the original, going as far as to confirm that the fucking spin-off reboot movie was somehow canon in some bizarre multiverse time travel fuckassery, and just in general trampling all over the world and themes of the original series. There's a discussion to be had on whether the existence of these sequels have ruined the value of the original ending, but there are also a few shows that have had pretty decent endings in the sense that they concluded everything they needed to, but they still left room for a sequel which were eventually made that really didn't live up to the original.
I would argue that, because I'm somebody that can actually look at Resurrection, Code Geass Resurrection, and, I can finagle it in with the original series, which, oh, Kip, you can't do that. That's not how that works. One, I subscribe to the Code Geass theory and have for a number of years. Two, we literally have reconstructed Jeremiah. It's not outside of the realm of possibility that Shirley Finette could have been, especially being as close to Jeremiah, Rolo, Lelouch as she was, could have gotten squirreled away somewhere and then regenerated. I don't. There's a headcanon in there. There's reaching. Don't get me wrong, but it doesn't ruin my enjoyment of it. It really doesn't. And it really just depends what your form of canon is. You can look at what is it, Dragon Ball GT for a number of years, right? I don't know too much about Dragon Ball. I know it was Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball GT, right? And then we went into some other shows, right? Someone's gonna definitely roast me in the comments. But for a number of years, I remember that they didn't consider GT canon at all. And if that's your own personal perspective of canon, yeah. I'm a walking. I am the Star Wars fan that both Legends and canon look at and they want to just collectively hate, because I look at Force Unleashed and I'm like, nah, it's canon. And both sides of the aisle will look at me and be like, what, are you crazy? And I'm like, no, I think it's canon. This is where my canon is. And the Legends people be like, but that's not how that works. Head desk. And then you get the canon people, that's not how that works. Head desk, right? At the end of the day, it's a form of entertainment. And while you can have a discussion on canon versus not canon, at the end of the day, if it means something to you, or if you want to disregard something entirely, aka Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, retconning like the entirety of the series, right? Choose to ignore it. You can have an opinion on it, especially if you've read it and experienced it, and be like, okay, I get it. I don't like the direction this went with. Personally, I don't acknowledge this, right? That kind of thing, right? So, while there is a canon answer, right, you can be subjective in what you accept in a story and not accept in a story. I mean, this definitely gets into the territory where Twitter will go on how Astolfo is a trans icon and they're a powerful trans figure. That is a whole Twitter argument, and apparently it's like 5 different arguments in a trench coat that I really don't want to get into here, right? But, you know, you will get into those situations where people will want to push certain narratives depending on the information that they pick and choose to see, right? This has been a way longer tangent than I thought it was going to be. I mean, it's just, if you find something that you like and you want it to be canon, cool. If you find something you don't like, don't want it to be canon, cool. Understand that stops as soon as you start talking to other people, and then you can start, you know, showing supporting evidence if you want to get into a discussion about it.
First Psychopaths had some truly interesting and brilliant ideas that were explored and has yet to be replicated. Nothing from Steins Gate, either from its sequel movies or Zero, came close to capturing the original spirit, and the only thing I thought the new Fooly Cooly brought to the table was a few new great tracks from The Pillows. I think my problem with all of these is that they are examples where a sequel definitely wasn't needed or originally planned, but they made one anyway. It's not like the Mob Psycho Season 2s of today where the storyline didn't end and the sequel continues to add and enhance the plots, where the original series had said everything it wanted to and put a full stop on it, making it hard for any sequel to capture that same magic, even if in some cases it had left space for further ideas to be explored. However, to go in the complete opposite direction, you sometimes get anime that choose to give itself a conclusive ending, even if the original story actually continues. Kind of a lost art nowadays are anime that follow the source material up to a point only to diverge from it, giving an ending that's more conclusive, either because the source material...
Oh boy, this is the original Fullmetal Alchemist. I remember that. The original FMA was still going on when the anime was going on when the manga was still being written. So the original FMA anime is an anime-only ending versus FMA Brotherhood, which was more faithful to the manga. I actually have never finished FMA in any capacity. The amount of people that are just getting pitchforks in the comment section, because I said I haven't finished Trigun. I haven't watched Trigun. I haven't watched Cowboy Bebop. I haven't watched FMA. The amount of people that are just about to crusade at me is just growing ever by the day. And it's actually kind of entertaining and kind of terrifying.
They are adapting from is still incomplete or far too long to cover in the episode counts they are given. Now, when I say it's a lost art, I mean it kind of dug its own grave, set itself on fire, then jumped in head first. Soul Eater, Claymore, Hellsing, Blue Exorcist, Gantz, Akame ga Kill. While all of these shows had conclusive endings that stopped at the point before the manga had, instead of achieving their purpose of ending the series in a satisfying way, it just made fans want to end themselves. The problem with anime original endings is that when an anime tries to go a different direction in order to give an ending that's more conclusive, you miss out on the proper build-up and foreshadowing to make this happen. This is made even more confusing when you get sequel seasons that continue to follow the manga for an anime that's already been given a conclusion. In most cases, you can just pretend the final anime-only arc didn't happen and just continue business as usual. But occasionally, you get something like Tokyo Ghoul Route A, the completely anime-only sequel to Tokyo Ghoul, aka Tokyo Ghoul Season 2. Not to be confused with Tokyo Ghoul Re Season 2, which is the second season to Tokyo Ghoul Re, the sequel season to Tokyo Ghoul, because Tokyo Ghoul Route A, aka Season 2, doesn't follow the manga. So
I think the reason this can, and people could make an argument, oh, well, Fate does it. Fate does certain things of this. Fate is also, I would argue, the exception because the writing team just is on a different level. And not to put down any of these writers, like they can, with the world they've created and the lore that they've done, like with the Akasha, right? As we went over in the other Gigguk video, right? Like, they can finagle it into timelines and bubbles within bubbles and timelines, right? This doesn't quite work because it will confound your audience.
So that makes Tokyo Ghoul Re the canon second season of Tokyo Ghoul, except Tokyo Ghoul Re, aka canon second season, doesn't immediately continue the events of Tokyo Ghoul season 1. I mean, why the fuck would it, right? So instead, it continues on from Tokyo Ghoul manga.
Nice.
Obviously, which was never fully adapted into an anime, which makes it really easy to follow. So if you're an anime-only watcher, it's actually pretty simple. All you need to do is watch Tokyo Ghoul, then read the Tokyo Ghoul manga, then watch the Tokyo Ghoul live action, then comes the Tokyo Ghoul musical, then Tokyo Ghoul Grand Order for the Nintendo DS, and then after you've done all that...
Oh, that's regular DS. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. All right. Ooh. Oh. That's been a hot minute.
You're finally ready to play Kingdom Hearts 3. To my recollection,
So here's the thing, like, and this has been an argument that I've cited against, like, franchises like Halo and even the Star Wars sequel trilogy, right? 7, 8, 9. Like, if you want to have a cohesive, coherent story, right, you need to make it as easy as possible for your audience to engross themselves in that media. As somebody that actually likes the sequel trilogy, I'm a minority of people. I understand it has its flaws and cite some of its flaws. I think Ben and Rey being a love interest at the end, I think it ruined a lot of the plot of 9, personally. I think it absolutely shattered it. I did not like it, personally. You know, I can cite the issues, and part of the issue was, like, just citing 9, right? They just bring in the Force dyad out of nowhere. Oh, well, if you're following along since, 7, no, this totally makes sense. It's like, mate, I've been following along since 7. What are you talking about? I've watched the entire, 9 films. Let's put it this way. I've watched the entire prequel trilogy alone, in the dozens of times at this point, right? I would argue I've been watching Return of the Jedi with my dad since I was a kid. Let's put it that way. My dad went to A New Hope back when it was just called Star Wars in theaters, right? Like, I can talk to a degree about Star Wars. I think I have the authority to talk a little bit, right? And, when I go into this and it's like, okay, but where is the root of the dyad here? Where is the root of this? The Knights of Ren show up in episode 9 and they're just, they're just like, hey, new boy band dropping the sickest beats, just following behind Ben, right? It's like, when you have, all this is it's in excess novels and comics and extraneous pieces of media. Halo has the exact same problem. Going at the ending of 5, which I liked 5's story. I'm in the minority. I'm okay saying this, right? And, we didn't get to see Chief and Arby meet up on the screen. That was immediately followed up, that ending, in a novel. You have things like, I think, so there were, in Halo Infinite, there was I think it was like Alexander, and he like blows up the medical facility. Did you know June was on that? Like, June, Spartan, the headhunter from Reach, was on that facility. Oh, but where does it say that? It's in a book somewhere. If you're going to have a cohesive narrative, you're going to want to bring all necessary, required pieces of context into the same medium. Not all of us are going to be VOD video watchers. Not all of which I am, personally. Not all of us are going to be scouring comics and stuff for each minute detail. Absolutely, there's those of us that want to do that. Absolutely. But also there's people that just want to go and they just want to pay the price of admission for a good experience. And sure, you can explain, in more detail what a Force dyad is in excess comics and stuff. You can go explain more into the Knights of Ren, but they should have had a lot more screen time. At the very least, mention of this should have been in 7, personally, honestly, if you wanted a cohesive plot hook, right? So, circling back, I mean, it's when you have Tokyo Ghoul doing this, where you have to watch the first season, then you have to read the manga, and then you have to go to the live action, then you have to do, the musical, then you got to do the DS game, and then you can get to RE, which is the canon season 2. At that point, you are adding, like these other things that people like to cite aren't good storytelling, right? You adding all these steps is alienating a good portion of your audience. Sure, it might be good for metrics. Sure, it might be good for product and units sold, right? But are you delivering a coherent story and experience to your audience? That's the $1 million question.
only anime original ending that has been positively received has been the original Fullmetal Alchemist.
Right.
And what made this possible was the fact that since the anime started diverging by the halfway point, it was able to carve out its own narrative and tackle things in a different way, giving much more adequate time to set up its ending, and for its time, people were satisfied considering the original manga was still ongoing. Having said that though, nowadays I get the sense that this ending is looked down upon because we now have Brotherhood, which remakes the entire series to give an ending the majority seem to agree was much better than what we originally got. And this is why I feel you just don't see this kind of ending nowadays. If you diverge from the source material, it's very hard to make something satisfactory even if you make it conclusive, and fans seemingly would much rather be left hanging than given a conclusion that absolutely sucks dick. And that leads us to our next section. In the technical term,
I see that. I see that High School of the Dead. Oh god, I love that show. I'm overdue for a watch.
We know as no, wait. I must be showing my age. That's not what the cool kids are saying these days. That's better.
Nice.
As we know, every story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Except in anime, where we get a beginning, half a middle, and a season 3 that's never gonna come. This is a very common occurrence in anime. We see an interesting setup to a story or world, a major arc or two happens, and just as you feel you've just about scratched the surface of what it has to offer, it ends, and you never hear from it again. If you're an anime fan, you've probably experienced this a lot, especially in the short, hard-hitting seasonal anime culture, as it can sometimes feel like certain anime were made as a glorified advert for the source material. See, when it comes to people who read source material like manga, there are two types of manga readers. The brave, rare, heroic souls who throw themselves into the expansive world of manga, working tirelessly to find that next hidden gem within the ocean of unknown titles. And then there's everyone else who saw an airing anime and couldn't wait to find out what happens next. Back in the day, there were some pretty infamous endings for doing this, and by infamous, I mean it was like the animators ran out of paper to draw on and were like, yeah, let's just cut to credits and hope nobody cares. Everyone cared.
I will forever be sad we will never get a High School of the Dead season 2. I will say I respect the reasons, as the original author passing is very relevant, and I will respect that. I can be sad, don't get me wrong, but I can also be respectful.
Air Gear, Batum, the original Hunter x Hunter, High School of the Dead. These just ended right in the middle of a story arc with all number of story threads up in the air before just stopping dead. No conclusion, no promise of another season, just cut to credits. And then you had the original Berserk, which didn't just stop in the middle of a story arc, but right in the middle of the most shocking, scarring turn of events that literally destroyed a man, leaving him bleeding tears of blood, screaming in anger in a state of shock, betrayal, aghast at the events that just unfolded. And that was just me. I don't even know how Guts felt. Back then, fans would have sold their soul to see what happens next. And little did we know that 20 years later, we'd get our wish. Yeah, we got our wish, right? We have no right to complain. We got our fucking wish. Who made a deal with the fucking Behelits to make this wish come true? Nowadays, what I will say is that seasons at least are more carefully planned out so audiences get some kind of closure in the arcs that they tackle. But still, if you've been an anime fan for a while, I'm sure you've gotten used to the feeling of waiting for a season 2 or 3 that's may or may not ever come. Whether that be ReZero. Holy fucking shit, are you serious? No Game No Life, Spice and Wolf, The Devil Was a Part-Timer. A Berserk adaptation we can be proud of. Or countless other shows. If you're lucky, you may get another season, or I guess the hot new thing nowadays is sequel movies. Oh, look at that sexy boy walking down the red carpet. But even then, will it ever even come close to completion? Not likely. Part of the life cycle within the anime and manga culture is that we get an anime adaptation when you have a hot title, and that rarely happens after a title has already ended. On the rare occasion, you get something like Devilman Crybaby, where the anime is adapting an old title that's finished, but more often than not, you find yourself finishing the anime, then when you catch up to the manga or light novel, the story is still at least a few years away from completion. One thing I both love and hate about the medium of anime is just how many new shows with massive variety we constantly get. But the downside of that is, as an anime fan, you get used to being introduced to stories, characters, and worlds which you know you're never gonna see the ending of. And honestly, I think that's kind of a shame, because to me, even though I don't think the ending is always the most important factor, a lot of the anime that have stuck in my mind years after they have finished are the ones that end.
Oh boy, I'm not the Cowboy Bebop, but I have analyzed Code Geass into the ground. Let's put it that way. We're entering Kip's territory here.
Now, you may be sitting there wondering why I cared enough about anime endings that I would want to make a whole video on it.
It's
and
important.
That's because I just wanted to express how much I value a great ending. Well, I don't think every series needs a fantastic ending or even a proper ending for it to be a fantastic series. The ones that do have one, I never forget.
Yeah.
My favorite anime ending of all time still is Code Geass's original ending.
Oh my god. Oh, Gigguk and I same page. Oh, I'm gonna let him speak through the entirety of his point because I need to hear somebody else say their reasoning before I can support and defend it. Right? This makes me incredibly happy as somebody that looks to this series, and you know, I don't see, oh well, it's just a work, right? To me, it's so much more than that. It's so much more because it tackles racism, it tackles classism, it tackles colonialization, it tackles patriarchy, it tackles society, social issues like conforming to the social standard and norms, right? Nina's in the closet, quote unquote. Even in the dub, there's even a joke about get back in the closet, Nina. It is a powerful series and at points very gray. So I'm going to let Gigguk explain.
Now, over a decade later, when I think back to Code Geass with the second season in mind especially, I don't remember the complete mess it was at times, the complete flip-flopping of characters that suited whatever the plot needed, or whoever the fuck this little shit was. Does anyone remember the cat episode?
Yes.
Does anyone remember the pizza episode?
Yes.
I remember season 2, episode 25, Re. I remember Lelouch's sacrifice. I remember the trumpets of Madder Sky blaring as they explained Zero's Requiem.
Yeah.
Jaws wide open, goosebumps galore as I realized, holy fuck, everything had a point. Everything was leading up to this one moment and feeling a sense of awe, jubilation, sadness, and emptiness all at once as the credits started rolling.
Yeah.
And that is the power of a great ending.
It's
that bittersweet void that tells you that the journey is over. As much as you loved the path you took to get here and never wanted it to end, the fact that it did end makes it even more special, and you wouldn't have it any other way. Because yes, sometimes it's about the journey, not the destination, but when you have a breathtaking destination, it can give even more meaning to that journey and make that entire voyage you took that much more extraordinary.
Agree.
Nowadays, so much focus is given to how to begin a story. With so many anime competing for your attention every season, it's all about how to make the highest impact as fast as possible, how to immediately stand out from the crowds, but to me, it's the ending that sticks with you. There have been plenty of anime with great beginnings that slowly fizzle out and get forgotten.
Yeah.
But I have never forgotten an anime with a great ending. It wraps up everything the story was trying to say, allows me to truly reflect on the anime as a whole, and kind of make peace with the fact that it is complete. Because if you end your anime right, it can be a moment you'll never forget.
I've never seen Cowboy Bebop. I remember this scene. It's everywhere.
Bang.
Hey guys, hope you enjoyed that video. Again, I just wanted to give a quick thanks to Another Eden for making this video possible. If any of what I said has interested you, then please check them out in the link below. Just a quick note, it's not available officially on app stores in Europe at the moment, but they are looking for a full European release soon. And with that said, thank you very much to Eliful, Robert Harnborg, Basil, Lauken, and everyone else on my Patreon for supporting me this month. Also, I know a lot of you have been asking, but I will be doing another seasonal chart anime stream when I go through all the anime next season. That's going to be next week on Wednesday the 3rd of April at 3 PM Eastern Daylight Time, here on YouTube. I wanted to do it on a weekend, but unfortunately I am not free for any of the weekends coming up, and I wanted to experiment with doing a stream on YouTube, as last time it was on my Twitch, and a lot of people weren't even aware that I had a Twitch. So yeah, anyway, that's it from me though. I've been Gigguk, and I'll see you all next time.
This was amazing. And obviously, I mean, people could be like, oh, Kip, you have confirmation bias because Code Geass, right? And yes and no. You know, I cite it because it was good. And ending an anime in a memorable way can stick with you forever. Even just a story, ending a story in a memorable way can stick with you forever. Who remembers Robert Jordan, The Great Hunt, Book 2? Do you remember how that ends? I sure don't. I read the book. I have no idea. I can't remember. Do you remember how Paulini Eldest ends? Not the exact words, but I know how I remember how it ends. It ended in a very good way to go into the next books. Do you remember how? Let's see here. Do you remember how High School of the Dead ended? Right. Do you know what happens other than cliffhanger? No. Original FMA, the one that did the anime only ending. Do you remember how that ends? I hardly watched it, and I hardly remember FMA. And it's not that I don't want to watch it. I really want to watch it. I just don't have the time. Remember how it ends with Ed making a sacrifice? And wasn't it Alphonse on a train? And that led into the movie, right? There's a correct way to end stories, and there's good ways to end stories. And it's really the stories that give a satisfying conclusion that will stick with us. You can have a subpar story with plot holes, right? You can have, which in this case I'm citing Guilty Crown, right? As much as I love it, all the budget went to the music, let's be real. All of the music was so good. And the ending to that, whether you chastise it for being, parallel to Code Geass, whether you chastise it for certain plot holes, whether you think certain things don't make sense, because a lot of things didn't make sense in there. I'm going to be real. There were definitely some plot contrivances that I did have. But I remember Shu making a sacrifice to want to save everybody from, was it Zero? The cancer, right? And Inori taking his sight, but in return, making sure he didn't have to sacrifice himself. And it ending with an epilogue of people after the events of Guilty Crown, and Shu just listening to Inori singing without his sight. It's a very powerful ending, and it sticks in my head more than other series I've seen because they ended it on a good note. But I digress. That's enough Kip for today. Let me know what your thoughts are. Let me know what you think. If Kip should watch FMA at some point, and I will see you next time.